thanks for tuning in for another episode of Math with Mullins. Today we're going to be looking at our Chapter 5 review. This part 1 is no calculator, so we're going to try our best to remember these square roots and cube roots. The square root of 121 is 11, the square root of 400 is 20, and the square root of 64 is going to be 8. As we keep going, we've got 289, that square root is going to be 17. The square root of 4 is 2, the square root of 16 is 4, and I'm going to go kind of backwards here. 9, square root of 25 is 5, 13, and then 9. Then we're going to estimate the square root to the nearest integer. So 98 is really close to the perfect square 100, so we're going to estimate it's about 10. 35 is really close to the perfect square 36, so we're going to say 6. 119 is closest to 121, so we'll say 11 here. Negative 46 is closest to negative 49, so we'll say negative 7. 37 is again close to 36, so we'll say 6. And 24 is close to 25, so we'll say 5. Which number is greater? So for this one, the square root of 5 is really close to the square root of 4. So we're going to guess that's a little bit larger than 2, maybe like 2.1. So if we're going to do the comparison here, we're going to say probably 2.9. And then same thing here, the square root of 17 is really close to the square root of 16. We would guess the square root of 17 is like 4.1, so 4.5 should be greater. Cube root of 1 is 1, 64 is 4, cube root of 27 is 3. The cube root of negative 27 is negative 3, cube root of 8 is 2, cube root of 125 is 5. Now we get to classify. Remember, and I kind of wrote this backwards to see if I could trick you, but hopefully you were above that. Number 24 is irrational, 25 is rational, 26 is a natural, whole, integer, and rational. 2.5 is rational, negative 5 would be an integer and rational, negative 7 is irrational, 1/11 is rational, 7 is natural, whole, integer, rational, 9.63 repeating is rational, and pi is irrational. Now we get to the part where we want to use a calculator. So if you haven't had a chance, go ahead and take out your calculator. And let's start. Find the missing length of each right triangle. Remember, right triangles, we can use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. If it's not a perfect square, leave as root, or I told you in class you can round to the 10th. So we've got 3 squared plus 4 squared is my a and b, equals x squared, so that's 9 plus 16 equals x squared. 25 is equal to x squared, so the square root of that would be 5. For the next one, I have a is my 2, b is missing, c is 7, so I did 2 squared plus x squared equals 7 squared. So we've got 4 plus x squared equals 49. We're going to subtract 4 from both sides and get 45. So you can leave it as the square root of 45, or when you find the square root of 45, we get about 6.7. Find the distance between the pair of each points. Remember, this is when we're using our distance formula, x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. So we want to label x1, y1, x2, y2 for both of these. And begin. x2 minus x1 would be the first one, 7 minus 2 squared, plus negative 15 minus negative 3 squared. 7 minus 2 is 5 squared, and negative 15 minus negative 3 would be negative 15 plus positive 3, so that's going to be negative 12 squared. We're going to get 25 plus 144, still finding that square root, and we get the square root of 169, which is equal to 13. And then for this next one, we've got negative 5 minus 3 squared plus negative 11 minus 4 squared. Negative 5 minus negative 3, that's negative 8 squared. Negative 11 minus negative 4 is negative 15 squared, so I've got 64 and 225 to add together. I'm going to get the square root of 289, which is equal to 17. Would the given sides form a right triangle? Explain your reasoning. Again, right triangles need a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So my c always has to be the biggest number, so I'm going to go and label that first. A and b can be the two smaller ones. For this one, 8 squared would be 64, 15 squared would be 225, and 17 squared would be 289. 64 plus 225 is 289. Since 289 equals 289, we can say yes. And then same thing here, we've got 5 squared, 11 squared, and 12 squared. I've got 25 plus 121 to see if it equals 144. 25 plus 121 is 146. So 146 does not equal 144, so we have to say no for number 6. A car leaves a parking lot and travels 6 miles due east. That car makes a 90-degree turn and then travels 8 miles north. When making the final turn, the car has enough gas in the tank to travel 10.4 miles. Can the car make it back to the parking ramp using a direct route? And explain your reasoning. Hint, draw it on the graph starting at the origin. Remember, east is to the right and north is up. So here's my origin, and we're going to do my first turn, 6 miles due east, so that's to the right, so over 6. Okay, then, and it says parking ramp, the car makes a 90-degree turn and travels 8 miles due north. So that means we're making a 90-degree angle, which means we're making a right angle. So now I've got 6 and 8. When making the final turn, the car has enough gas in the tank to travel 10.4 miles. Can the car make it back to the parking ramp using a direct route? Which means this would be the direct route. Okay, so we would just see, could this be equal to 10.4 or less, depending on the gas in the tank. So 6 squared plus 8 squared, we'll see if that equals first. So that's 36 plus 64 is equal to x squared. 36 plus 64 is 100. This is a popular one we keep finding, and the square root of that is going to be 10. So this direct route is 10 miles, and since he has 10.4 miles, we can say yes, he has enough gas, since that 10 miles is less than the 10.4 left in his tank. Could the car in number 6 make it home if it went 7 miles east and 9 miles north before returning home? Explain your reasoning. So this one, instead of going 6, we would go 7. I'm going to draw this in green. And instead of 8, we go 9. So again, we can try 7 squared plus 9 squared to see what that length would be. 49 plus 81 equals x squared. 49 plus 81 gives me 130. And then when I find the square root of 130, I'm going to get 11.4. So this one would be no, since the car would need to go 11.4 miles, and it only has 10.4 miles left in the tank. Okay. Find the side lengths of the triangle in the figure. Is it a right triangle? And explain your reasoning. This one you would need to use the distance formula for, at least for these two sides. With this one over here, it's actually pretty simple because you're at -4 and you go to 6, so this is a 10. But then I need to figure out what are the distances of the other one. So my coordinates for this is -4, 2. This coordinate here is -2, -2. So I'm going to find the distance of this first. So if I've got -4, 2 and -2, -2, labeling x1, y1, x2, y2, that means I'm going to do -2 minus -4 squared plus -2 minus 2 squared plus positive. That would be -2 plus 4, which is 2 squared, and this is -4 squared, or 4 squared. negative 4 squared, but when I square it, it's going to be positive anyway. So 4 plus 16, which is going to give me the square root of 20. And the square root of 20 is about 4.47. I'm going to round that to 5. So this length right here is 4.5. And then my other length is 6, 2. So I'm going to find the distance of those. I'm going to erase this real quick. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. So still using negative 2, 2, but now my other one is 6, 2. So again, x1, y1, x2, y2. Here we go. Negative 2 minus 6 squared for x2 minus x1 plus negative 2 minus 2 squared for my y2 minus y1. This will be negative 8 squared, negative 4 squared, 64 plus 16 is 80. So the square root of 80 is about 8.9 rounded. And then it says, is this a right triangle? Explain your reasoning. We know it's a right triangle if it meets the criteria of the Pythagorean theorem. So we're going to plug that in and see what we get. My side lengths are 4.5, 8.9, and 10. So I'm going to say 4.5 squared plus 8.9 squared and see if that gives me 10 squared. 4.5 squared is 20.25. 8.9 squared is 79.21. 10 squared is 100. And then I'm going to add these two together, plus 20.25. And I'm getting 99.46, which when we talked about this, as long as it's close enough, I would say that is probably a right triangle. So we would say yes, it meets the criteria of your Pythagorean theorem. That's going to be the last question on your review. Thanks so much for sticking with me through it. Hopefully this helped you study for your test tomorrow. Good luck, and we will check in next time. Have a great day.